The dashboard clock blinked 12:01 when I finally turned into our street. Christmas lights still shimmered on every porch, but the magic felt distant, like a song from another lifetime. Snow powdered the pavement, muffling the tires' hum as I eased into the driveway. After 14 hours in the ER, even the silence felt heavy. My shoulders burned, my eyes stung, and the faint scent of antiseptic clung to my scrubs no matter how many times I rolled down the window. I sat there a moment, engine idling, hands resting on the steering wheel. I told myself the long shifts were worth it. Double pay, more patients helped, more proof that all the years of sacrifice had meant something. But right then, staring at the faint glow of our living room through the curtains, I didn't feel noble. I just felt empty. Michael was supposed to fly back tomorrow morning. Business trip to Chicago. His company never quite respected holidays. Maya had texted earlier, going to Grandma's for dinner. Love you. The thought had carried me through the last few trauma cases. At least she'd have family warmth, laughter, food that wasn't cafeteria lasagna. When I stepped out, the cold bit through my scrubs. My breath rose in pale clouds as I climbed the porch steps. I expected darkness inside, maybe the faint hum of the heater, maybe the echo of Michael's recorded message on the answering machine. Instead, a soft yellow glow spilled from the living room. For a heartbeat, warmth bloomed in my chest. Maybe Maya had come home early, too full of sugar cookies and stories. Maybe she'd fallen asleep on the couch with an old Christmas movie humming on TV. But as I pushed open the door, the air felt wrong. Too still, too fragile. There she was, curled up on the sofa in her red wool coat, knees tucked to her chest, dark hair spilling across her face. Her boots were still on. The faintest tremor shook her shoulders, though the house was warm. On the coffee table, an untouched plate of food sat beside a tin of her peppermint bark, the recipe she'd perfected all week. Maya. My voice came out soft, unsure. Her eyes fluttered open. For an instant, she looked startled, then forced a small smile. Hey, Mom. You're home early. I dropped my bag, heart pounding. Sweetheart, why are you? What happened? Nothing. She rubbed her face, smearing faint streaks of mascara. I just didn't stay long. Up close, the truth unfolded in details. The dress she'd ironed that morning now creased, the ribbon from her hair dangling loose, the faint red mark on her cheek where she must have pressed it against the window during the drive home. I knelt beside her, brushing away a stray strand. Tell me. She hesitated. Her fingers fidgeted with the hem of her coat. Grandma said there wasn't room at the table. The words landed like ice water. What do you mean, no room? There were a lot of people, she whispered. Cousins, neighbors. Uncle Jim brought his coworkers. They had those folding chairs out, even the plastic ones from the garage. She swallowed. Grandma said she thought I was coming later, with you. My throat tightened. So she told me I could wait in the kitchen if I wanted. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The clock on the mantel ticked too loudly. The lights on the tree blinked mockingly cheerful. You drove home in this weather. She nodded. It wasn't far. Just snow. Her voice wavered. It's fine, Mom. But it wasn't fine. It was the opposite of fine. It was every unspoken slight, every forced smile, every moment I'd excuse their behavior because family is family. I felt it all condense into one sharp, unbearable point. My daughter, 16 years old, left standing in a doorway full of people and told there wasn't room for her. I took her cold hands between mine. You shouldn't have had to drive back alone. Her lips trembled. I didn't want to make things worse. Grandma already looked mad I showed up. I couldn't find words. I just held her until her breathing steadied, until the tremor faded. Then I helped her out of her coat and guided her upstairs. She curled beneath the quilt her great-grandmother had sewn decades ago, eyes heavy with exhaustion. I smoothed her hair and whispered, "Never again, sweetheart." Her eyes flickered open for a moment. Promise. Promise. When I returned downstairs, the plate of food on the table had cooled, untouched. The twinkling lights reflected off the tin of peppermint bark, the one she'd made with such care, the one she'd wanted to share. I sank onto the sofa, burying my face in my hands. For years, I'd told myself my parents' sharp edges were just part of who they were, that they loved me, just differently. But tonight, watching my daughter cry quietly in her sleep, I saw the truth with painful clarity. Love doesn't leave a child out in the cold. The house creaked softly as the heater kicked in. Outside, snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in deceptive calm. In the stillness, I made a silent vow, one I hadn't dared before. No more excuses. No more pretending. Whatever came next, I would not let her carry the same wounds I'd learned to hide. Tomorrow, I would decide what kind of mother, what kind of woman I would be from now on. The next morning, the house smelled faintly of cinnamon and coffee, but neither of us had much appetite. Sunlight filtered through frosted windows, scattering cold patterns across the floor. I stood at the sink, watching my breath fog the glass while the coffee pot gurgled behind me. The snow had stopped overnight, leaving the world outside glazed in white, quiet enough to hear the hum of my own pulse. Maya came downstairs in her flannel pajamas, hair still mussed from sleep. She offered a small, polite smile, too polite for 16. "Morning," she said softly, as though afraid to break the hush. "Morning, sweetheart," I answered, forcing brightness I didn't feel. "Did you sleep?" She nodded, then shrugged. "Kinda." Silence stretched between us, heavy as wet wool. I wanted to tell her she didn't have to be brave for me. I wanted to ask every detail, to fix it, to make it make sense. Instead, I poured 2 mugs and carried them to the table. Steam rose between us like a fragile barrier. She toyed with the handle. Grandma texted, said she hopes I got home safe. I waited, but that was it. No apology. No invitation for tomorrow's leftovers. I forced a breath. That was kind of her. Maya looked up, eyes glistening with disbelief. "Mom, you don't have to defend them." Her words hit harder than I expected, because for most of my life, that's exactly what I'd done. Defended them. Explained away every slight, every cold glance, every time my parents found a way to remind me that I didn't quite fit their picture of success. When I was her age, I learned to keep my voice soft, my gratitude louder. Holidays had always been performances, coordinated smiles over perfect roasts, careful avoidance of subjects that might expose a crack. And I thought I could shield Maya from that. I remember the first Christmas after she was born. I'd bundled her in a red blanket and driven 3 hours to my parents' house, heart swelling with the idea of introducing their first grandchild. My mother had cooed politely, then handed her back as if holding porcelain. "She looks tired," she'd said. "Maybe she should nap somewhere else." Back then, I laughed it off. Now, that moment came rushing back with a sharpness that stole my breath. Maybe the signs had always been there. When Maya was 10, my sister's kids opened a mountain of gifts in the living room while Maya unwrapped a single sweater, too small, tags still attached from a clearance rack. I'd watched her face, waiting for disappointment, but she only smiled and thanked them. She'd learned grace where I'd learned silence. Across the table, she sipped her coffee and studied me carefully. "You're mad, huh?" "I'm disappointed," I admitted, mostly in myself. I should have seen it sooner. Her brow furrowed. "Seen what?" "That some people love the idea of family more than the responsibility of it." She considered that. Then, "So what now?" The question lingered. What now? Every year I'd packed guilt and casserole into the car and driven to their house because that's what daughters do. Every year, I'd swallowed small humiliations for the sake of keeping peace. But last night had changed something fundamental. I couldn't unsee the image of her sitting alone in that doorway, uninvited, unwanted. I reached across the table and took her hand. "Now," I said, "we make new traditions." Her eyes lifted, uncertain but curious. I smiled, though my throat ached. "We've got the whole day. Let's make it ours." We spent the morning rummaging through the attic for decorations I hadn't touched in years. The boxes smelled of dust and pine. Inside were faded ornaments from Maya's preschool crafts, handprints in glitter glue, paper snowflakes that had lost their edges. She laughed, shaking glitter onto the carpet, and for the first time since last night, the sound felt like sunlight. We baked cookies using the old family recipe I'd always been told I could never quite get right. They burned at the edges, collapsed in the middle, and we ate every single one standing by the stove, laughing until tears blurred the room. Between moments of laughter, quiet crept in. Each silence reminded me of phone calls from years past, my mother's subtle critiques, my father's sighs of obligation. They'd built a hierarchy disguised as tradition, and I'd built my life around trying to climb it. But now, watching Maya dance barefoot on the tile while Christmas music hummed from the radio, I realized something new. Maybe the hierarchy only worked if we kept believing in it. At noon, the phone rang again. I let it ring. The voicemail light blinked silently, a small red heartbeat in the corner. "Who was it?" Maya asked. "No one who needs us today," I said. We took a walk instead. The neighborhood glittered under the afternoon sun, kids building lopsided snowmen, someone's speaker playing an off-key carol. A neighbor waved and handed us 2 candy canes. Simple kindness, nothing grand, nothing conditional. Halfway down the block, Maya slipped her hand into mine. "Mom." "Yeah." "I'm not mad anymore. Just sad." I squeezed her fingers. "Sad means you cared. It'll fade." She nodded slowly. "It feels different, though. Like I grew up overnight." I looked at her profile, the same sharp chin, the same stubborn calm, and thought maybe we both did. When we got home, dusk had already painted the windows lilac. I turned on the string lights around the tree, and the whole living room warmed with soft gold. Maya sat cross-legged by the fire, wrapping leftover cookies in foil. "Who are those for?" I asked. "Neighbors. Mrs. Green across the street lost her husband last year. She said holidays are hard." Her compassion caught me off guard. Even after being excluded, she still wanted to give. That's when I realized she'd already learned something I was only beginning to understand. Kindness isn't a transaction. It's a choice. I watched her tie the foil with a ribbon, carefully, deliberately. Pride filled the empty spaces where bitterness might have grown. Outside, Careless began to sing. The same song I'd heard every December now sounded different, clearer, almost healing. And somewhere inside me, the ghosts of Christmases past, the disappointments, the forced smiles, the need for approval, finally began to fade. The snow outside had stopped by morning, leaving the world coated in quiet forgiveness. I stood at the kitchen counter pouring coffee into a chipped holiday mug, one of the few decorations that had survived the years of being stored at my parents' house. The mug read "Family is forever." I turned it so the words faced the window. Maybe they were true for some people. Michael had taken Maya to the park to clear her head, the laughter echoing faintly from the street as they left. I'd told myself I was fine being alone for a while, but when the phone rang, the sudden sound cut through the stillness like a blade. The screen lit up with a name that could still make my chest tighten. Mom. I let it ring twice before answering. "Stephanie," she said, her voice already rehearsed, sugar-coated with purpose. "I've been thinking. It's Christmas week, and it's time to put this ugliness behind us. Everyone's asking for you and Maya. We're doing another dinner tonight. Something smaller. Come by at 7. Her words landed like stones in water, each one sending ripples through the fragile calm I'd built. Smaller. A second dinner. As if she could erase what happened by editing the guest list. "Mom," I began, but she didn't let me finish. "Your father wants to see his granddaughter. Carla's been in tears. You know she didn't mean to hurt anyone. You overreacted. That's what this is. Stephanie. Overreaction. Overreaction. The same word she used when I cried at 13 because my birthday gift had been rewrapped hand lotion from her vanity. The same word when I'd begged her not to let Dad scream at me for getting into nursing school instead of staying home to help out. I closed my eyes, holding the phone tighter. You turned my daughter away on Christmas Eve. A pause. Then that faint sigh of exasperation I'd heard my entire life. We didn't turn her away, dear. There was confusion about timing. That's all. She could have waited. In the kitchen. My voice trembled, not from fear, but from the sheer effort of staying calm. You told her she could wait in the kitchen while 26 people ate dinner. Her tone hardened. We did our best. Stephanie, you know how many guests we had. You always find fault with everything I do. I wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it. How she could turn my pain into her martyrdom within seconds. I'm not coming, I said finally. Neither is Maya. Silence. The kind that swells like thunderclouds before a storm. Don't be ridiculous, she said at last. You'll regret this. Family is all we have. No, I whispered. Family is what you build, not what you're born into. I hung up before she could reply. My hands shook as I set the phone down on the counter, but the tremor wasn't weakness. It was release. The weight that had pressed against my ribs for decades felt lighter somehow, as if each boundary I drew peeled away another layer of inherited guilt. Minutes later, the phone buzzed again. Texts from Carla. Carla, Mom said you're refusing to come? Are you seriously doing this to her? Carla, she's crying, Steph. You know she's not well. Carla, I told her you'd calm down eventually. Don't prove me wrong. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, 100 possible replies rushing to the surface. Every version of myself. The peacemaker, the fixer, the daughter desperate for approval, wanted to explain, to justify, to make them understand. Instead, I typed 2 words. Please stop. Then I set the phone face down and exhaled until the air left my lungs completely. When Maya and Michael returned, snowflakes clung to their coats like tiny stars. Maya's cheeks were pink from the cold. We built a snow fort, she said, her smile tentative but real. Dad let me name it Fort Freedom. I laughed, the sound foreign but welcome. I like that. We ate reheated Chinese leftovers for lunch, sitting cross-legged on the living room floor. The tree lights blinked lazily beside us. Half the bulbs burned out, the star at the top slightly crooked. Somehow it felt more beautiful than any Christmas I could remember. Maya glanced at me between bites. Grandma called, didn't she? I nodded. What did she say? She invited us to another dinner. Her fork paused mid-A. And I said no. For a heartbeat, she just stared. Then she set her fork down slowly, her eyes shining with something I hadn't seen before. Respect, maybe even pride. Really? Really? She leaned forward and hugged me, her arms fists and trembling. Thank you, she whispered. Later that evening, as twilight deepened, we baked cookies together, the same sugar cookies she'd taken to my parents' house days earlier. She decorated them with bright red icing and too many sprinkles, laughing when the shapes came out uneven. Halfway through the batch, she looked up and said softly, I used to think maybe Grandma didn't like me because I wasn't good enough. The words pierced deeper than any accusation could. I set down the spatula and met her gaze. You are more than enough, Maya. You always were. Sometimes people can't see what's in front of them because it reminds them of what they've lost in themselves. She nodded slowly, the understanding far too old for 16. Then it's their loss. We stood there, side by side, dusted in flour and forgiveness. Outside, the snow began again, silent and soft. I thought of my mother's voice, of Carla's texts, of all the years I'd twisted myself into shapes that fit their expectations. And I thought of this moment, simple, unadorned, sacred. I realized that letting go of them didn't mean hate. It meant choosing peace. Choosing Maya. Choosing me. When Michael came in with mugs of cocoa, He watched us quietly for a long moment before saying, "I think this is the first time this house has actually felt like Christmas." He was right. It wasn't the decorations or the dinner table or the crowd of relatives that made the season. It was the warmth that came from standing in your own truth, even when it cost you the comfort of old lies. As we sat together on the couch, wrapped in a blanket that smelled faintly of cinnamon and courage, I looked at my daughter, my reason, my anchor, and thought, this is enough. Outside, somewhere miles away, another dinner table gleamed under golden light, my mother at its head, my sister laughing too loudly, my father silent as ever. But for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the need to be there. Because here, in this quiet house that once felt empty, love had finally come home. The morning after Christmas dawned grey and brittle, like the sky itself was waiting to see what I'd do next. The house was quiet except for the soft hum of the heater. I stood by the window, coffee in hand, watching sunlight struggle through a web of clouds. For a rare moment, everything felt still. Peaceful, even. Then my phone buzzed. The first message was from my father. "Dad, Steph, your mother is heartbroken. She didn't sleep all night. Please, don't make this worse. You know she didn't mean anything by it." 2 minutes later, "Dad, she says she'll apologize if you'll just come over. Bring Maya. It's Christmas, for God's sake." I stayed at the screen until the words blurred. He'd always been the messenger, soft-spoken, reasonable, and complicit. His version of peace was silence. His solution to conflict was pretending it wasn't there. I didn't reply. By noon, my phone had become a battlefield. My sister Carla posted a photo on Facebook, her family in matching red sweaters, the caption reading, "Some people forget what the holidays are truly about, forgiveness and family." The comments filled quickly. "You're so strong, Carla. Praying for your parents. Family should stick together no matter what." A few mutual friends tagged me, asking if I was okay. I deleted the notifications without reading further. It was surreal, watching my private pain become someone else's public morality tale. When Michael came in from the garage, wiping his hands on a towel, he saw the look on my face. "Let me guess," he said softly. "They've started the campaign." I managed a weak smile. "Oh, it's in full swing. I'm the Christmas villain now." He set the towel down and wrapped an arm around my shoulders. "Let them talk. Truth doesn't need an audience." That night, Maya scrolled through social media and frowned. "Mom, Aunt Carla's post. Everyone's taking her side." "I know. It's not Faye." "No," I said quietly, "but it's predictable." She hesitated. "Do you want me to say something?" I shook my head. "You don't have to defend me, sweetheart. The truth defends itself, even when people can't see it yet." She nodded, but the hurt lingered in her eyes. She was 16, still young enough to believe that fairness and family were supposed to coexist. The next day, a letter arrived in the mail. The envelope was thin, my mother's looping cursive unmistakable. I opened it slowly, half expecting venom. Instead, it was worse, a guilt trip disguised as grace. "Stephanie, I hope you'll reconsider what you're doing. Your father's health isn't great, and this stress isn't helping. We all make mistakes. Don't let pride ruin what little time we have left together. I forgive you for the things you've said in anger. Please come to your senses before it's too late. Love, Mom." Forgive me. The irony almost made me laugh. The same woman who'd told my daughter she had no place at the table was now forgiving me for protecting her. I folded the letter neatly and slid it into a drawer, not to keep, but to remember. To remember that gaslighting could sound polite, that manipulation could wear the costume of concern. That afternoon, I found Maya in her room sketching. On her desk sat a new drawing, a girl standing at a window, snow falling outside, a glow of light behind her. I recognized the scene instantly, our living room last night. "She looks free," I said. "She is," Maya replied. "She's not waiting for anyone to open the door for her anymore." Her words struck me harder than any message or letter. My daughter had turned pain into art, rejection into perspective. She'd found her voice faster than I ever had. That night, we lit the fireplace and roasted marshmallows over the flame, laughing when one caught fire and dripped onto the hearth. The simple joy of it felt almost rebellious, as if we were rewriting what family meant, one small, quiet act at a time. But peace is never uncontested. 3 days later, my parents showed up at the hospital. I'd just finished a double shift when I saw them waiting by the staff exit. My father in his old wool coat, my mother clutching her purse like a shield. "Stephanie," my father started, his tone weary but pleading. "This has gone far enough." I could feel the eyes of a few coworkers lingering nearby. My cheeks burned. "Dad, this isn't the place," I said softly. My mother's voice sharpened. "You humiliated us, Stephanie. Eviction papers? After everything we've done for you." I took a breath, steadying myself. "You turned Maya away. You made her feel unwanted in a house that I paid for. That's everything you've done for me." A muscle in her jaw twitched. "You're still angry." "I'm awake," I corrected. Her eyes flashed. "You'll regret this when we're gone." "Maybe," I said, "but not as much as I'd regret teaching my daughter to accept being treated like she doesn't belong." My father stepped forward, his voice trembling. "You're destroying this family." I looked between them, the two people who had given a life but never warmth. "No," I said quietly. "You destroyed it when you decided some of us didn't matter." Then I walked past them, my scrubs rustling softly against the linoleum, my badge swinging at my chest like a medal of survival. When I reached my car, I sat there for a long moment, hands gripping the steering wheel. I'd expected to feel guilt, grief, some pang of nostalgia. Instead, there was only relief. I wasn't the girl begging for love anymore. I was the woman choosing peace. That evening, as I told Michael and Maya what had happened, Maya reached for my hand. "You're really not going back, are you?" "No," I said, "and neither are you." Outside, the wind picked up again, whistling through the trees, scattering the last of the Christmas lights from our porch. It sounded like a kind of cleansing, a goodbye whispered by the world itself. For the first time, I didn't flinch. Because sometimes peace doesn't come wrapped in forgiveness. Sometimes it arrives in the quiet aftermath of saying enough. A year later, the world felt quieter, softer, the kind of quiet that doesn't ache anymore, the kind that feels earned. Snow was falling again outside our Oregon home, just as it had last Christmas, but everything was different now. There were no voicemails from my mother, no guilt-laden letters, no endless explanations to people who'd already chosen their version of the story. Just peace. I stirred the pot of soup simmering on the stove, the scent of rosemary and roasted vegetables filling the air. The kitchen looked warm, lived in, art projects taped to the fridge, a half-finished jigsaw puzzle spread across the table, a crooked garland Maya had made from dried oranges and twine. She was 17 now, taller, sharper in her opinions but softer in her laughter. Michael had started calling her our resident philosopher because she asked questions that made us pause before answering. "Do you ever think about them?" she asked that afternoon, while helping me set the table. The table we used now was small, round, and scarred from years of life, nothing like my mother's formal dining set with its polished wooden seating chart disguised as hospitality. "Sometimes," I said, "not the way I used to." "How's that?" "I used to think about what I could do to make them love me. Now I just hope they find peace, even if it's without me." Maya smiled faintly, nodding as she placed mismatched plates at each seat. "That's kind of beautiful, Mom." I laughed softly. Beautiful or naive, I'm not sure which. "Maybe both," she said. Our doorbell rang just then. Not the sharp, commanding ring that used to announce my mother's visits, but a gentle chime. When I opened the door, it was our neighbors, the Ramos family, carrying a tray of cinnamon rolls still warm from the oven. Their youngest, Oliver, waved shyly from behind his mother's coat. "Merry Christmas, Stephanie," Mrs. Ramos said, smiling. "We figured since you're always dropping off cookies at our place, it's our turn to return the favor." "Merry Christmas," I said, meaning it. As they stepped inside, Maya took the tray, setting it on the counter beside the soup. Laughter filled the room, easy and unforced. We weren't blood, but we were family. The kind built on kindness, not obligation. Later that evening, after the Ramoses left, we sat around the tree, a smaller one this year, but fuller somehow. Maya handed me a wrapped box, her handwriting looping across the tag. "To Mom, for teaching me how to build peace from ashes." I swallowed hard before opening it. Inside was a framed sketch, the same one she'd started last year, a woman standing in the glow of her own window, snow falling outside. But this time, there were two figures beside her. The woman, the girl. The caption written in pencil below read, "We made our own light." Tears blurred my vision, but they didn't sting. "It's beautiful," I whispered. "It's us," she said simply. I pulled her close, and for a long moment, we just sat there, no noise, no expectations, just the rhythm of two hearts that had finally stopped apologizing for beating freely. After she went upstairs, I stepped out onto the porch. The night was calm, the snow whispering against the world. Across the street, the houses glowed with their own warmth, families gathered around dinners and laughter. For the first time, I didn't feel like an outsider looking in. Because home wasn't a place you were invited to. It was a piece you created for yourself. My phone buzzed once, an unfamiliar number, a short text. "Merry Christmas, Steph. Hope you and Maya are well. Dad. Just Dad. No guilt. No manipulation. Just a simple message." I stayed at it for a while, then typed back, "We're good, Dad. Hope you are too." Then I turned the phone off and slipped it into my pocket. No more waiting for apologies that would never come. No more trying to fit into places that had already decided I didn't belong. Inside, the fireplace crackled, and Michael was humming along to an old record, something from the 80s that always made him nostalgic. I joined him on the couch, leaning into his shoulder. "Next year," he said, "we should host again. Maybe a few more neighbors. Make it a tradition." I smiled. A different kind of Christmas. He nodded. "Exactly." The clock on the mantel ticked toward midnight. I watched the snow swirl outside, the soft white against the dark sky, and thought about the girl I'd been, the one who once drove through storms just to sit at someone else's table, praying there'd be a chair left for her. She wouldn't recognize this version of herself, the woman who built her own table, one sturdy enough for the people who truly belonged. Maya's laughter drifted down from upstairs, bright and unburdened. I closed my eyes and breathed it in, the sound of healing disguised as joy. Maybe forgiveness wasn't a door I had to open for them. Maybe it was the one I finally closed, gently but firmly, to keep the warmth inside. As the fire burned lower, I reached for one of the sugar cookies Maya had made, imperfect, over-iced, delicious. She'd added a tiny inscription in red frosting this time. "For us." I smiled, broke the cookie in half, and whispered into the quiet room. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart. We're finally home." Outside, the world was still wrapped in winter. But inside, the warmth was real, the kind that doesn't fade when the lights come down.